We have just emerged from a global health crisis, one that reshaped the world as we knew it. But there is another pandemic, a silent one, that has been slowly consuming us for years, and it's far more insidious. It's not the kind of addiction you can easily see or recognize, and it doesn't come in the form of a substance like alcohol or drugs. This new addiction has crept into every corner of our lives, seamlessly integrated into our daily routines, and is causing profound damage. Yet the world has hardly noticed. Its effects are widespread, devastating, and irreversible, yet it's still largely ignored. This addiction isn't to a substance, but to a device. Specifically, it's the addiction to smartphones and the digital world they open up. Smartphones have become an inescapable part of our lives. While they started as convenient tools for communication and productivity, they've since evolved into something far more powerful and far more dangerous. This addiction, in many ways, is worse than anything we've seen before, because it doesn't just affect a small portion of the population. It impacts nearly everyone, regardless of age, gender, or background. Today, almost every individual has a smartphone, and the addiction is so ingrained that it's become a social norm, no longer questioned or examined critically. Most people don't even realize how much their phone controls their daily existence. Consider this. If, 15 years ago, a new substance had been introduced that spread rapidly, affected more than half the global population, and caused a surge in mental health problems, accidents, and fatalities, the world would have demanded action. Governments would have rushed to regulate it. Lawsuits would have been filed against the corporations behind its distribution. Yet, in the case of smartphones, no such outrage or regulation has occurred. Instead, this addiction has grown with alarming speed and is now deeply embedded in nearly every aspect of our lives. Take a moment to think about how much time you spend on your phone. How often do you pick it up, check for messages, scroll through social media, or mindlessly watch videos? It's likely that you check your phone hundreds of times a day. You may have even been startled by the daily screen time report that pops up on your phone, revealing just how much of your day is consumed by digital distractions. Many people are completely unaware of how long they spend in this digital space, and even when they do recognize the amount of time spent on their devices, they often brush it off as normal. But it's not normal. The use of smartphones has become an addiction, and just like any other addiction, it comes with consequences. The effects of this addiction are neurological. When we engage with our phones, especially with the apps that are designed to capture our attention and keep us hooked, our brains release dopamine, a neurotransmitter that is responsible for feelings of pleasure and reward. This is the same chemical that is triggered when we eat, engage in pleasurable activities, or use substances that are addictive. But while dopamine served an evolutionary purpose to drive us toward survival-enhancing activities, today it's being manipulated by tech companies to ensure that we remain engaged with their platforms as long as possible. Every notification, every message, every like, and every new piece of content releases a burst of dopamine, making us feel good in the moment. The more we get, the more we crave. This addictive process is intensified by the constant flow of information and notifications that smartphones provide. There's always something new, something exciting, or something that promises instant gratification. This constant bombardment of stimuli creates a cycle of chasing the next high, much like any other addiction. It's not just the content itself that's addictive, but the unpredictable, uncertain nature of it. Similar to a gambler pulling the lever on a slot machine, people don't know when the next reward is coming, which makes them keep returning for more. This type of reinforcement is incredibly powerful because it keeps people hooked without them even realizing it. In fact, people who use smartphones are often in a state of perpetual anticipation, always wondering what new notification or update might be waiting for them. This unpredictable reinforcement mechanism is precisely what makes smartphone addiction so similar to a casino. In a casino, gamblers don't know when they will hit the jackpot, but the anticipation of the next reward keeps them playing. The same happens with smartphones. Each time we swipe or scroll, we're hoping for a new reward, whether it's an interesting post, a funny video, or a message from someone we care about. That uncertainty keeps us coming back, and the more we scroll, the more addicted we become. What was once a quick check of our notifications turns into hours spent scrolling through content, often without us even realizing how much time has passed. But the problem is much more pervasive than just the personal habit of checking our phones. Smartphones and the apps that run on them are engineered to be super addictive. Unlike the simple forms of addiction we traditionally think of, such as alcohol, tobacco, or drugs, smartphones combine several addictive behaviors into a single device. With a single tap, you can access social media, games, shopping apps, gambling platforms, streaming services, and pornography, all of which are designed to keep you hooked. This convergence of different types of addictive behaviors into one device means that smartphone addiction is more multifaceted and harder to escape. You can't just avoid one element of the device. It's all right there, constantly pulling at your attention. What makes this addiction even more dangerous is the rapid pace at which it has developed. Smartphones and social media have been around for less than 2 decades, and yet in this short time, they've become ubiquitous. In 2007, the first iPhone was released, and within a few years, smartphones were in the hands of nearly everyone, with a staggering 97% of Americans owning one by 2022. Teenagers are now spending an average of 9 hours per day on their phones, a number that continues to climb. The rapid adoption of smartphones has meant that we, as a society, have had no time to reflect on the long-term implications of this addiction. It has grown so fast that the mental health community is still struggling to catch up. Even though smartphone addiction is contributing to a rise in anxiety, depression, and suicide rates, there is no official recognition of phone addiction in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the ICD-10/ICD-11, International Classification of Diseases. Without formal recognition, it becomes incredibly difficult for medical professionals to diagnose, treat, or track the severity of the issue. This is why smartphone addiction is still being treated as a secondary issue, rather than a primary cause of the mental health crisis we are experiencing. The repercussions of this addiction are evident in nearly every facet of society. The most obvious effect is on mental health. Numerous studies have linked excessive smartphone use with increased rates of anxiety, depression, and feelings of isolation. As people spend more time online, they engage less with the real world. The constant comparisons to others on social media lead to negative self-image, especially among young people. Teenage girls in particular have been found to experience higher rates of body dissatisfaction, self-esteem issues, and depression due to the constant bombardment of edited photos and unrealistic beauty standards set by influencers and celebrities. Moreover, cyberbullying, harassment, and online shaming are rampant, leading to an even greater sense of isolation and emotional distress. For young people, the effects are especially concerning. During adolescence, the brain is still developing, and excessive screen time can interfere with the growth of crucial social and cognitive skills. Face-to-face interactions, especially with parents and caregivers, are essential for emotional development and well-being. Yet smartphones are creating a barrier between children and their caregivers. Parents are increasingly distracted by their own devices, and children are left to navigate the complexities of digital life on their own, often with little to no guidance. This is reshaping the very nature of childhood and family dynamics, leading to poorer quality of life for many young people. As the addiction deepens, it begins to impact relationships. Family dynamics, friendships, and romantic relationships are all suffering as a result of this digital obsession. Couples, for example, often find themselves spending more time on their phones than engaging with each other. Parents struggle to connect with their children, who are more absorbed in their screens than in meaningful conversations with their family. The effects are also seen in workplace productivity, as people are constantly distracted by their phones, finding it difficult to focus on important tasks or engage in deep work. As more and more people become glued to their devices, society as a whole begins to lose its ability to connect in meaningful ways, and this erodes the foundation of our social structure. The most frightening part of this addiction is the long-term neurological changes it can induce. Addiction, in any form, rewires the brain. When the brain is constantly exposed to dopamine triggers, it starts to crave those triggers more and more. As time goes on, this leads to increased tolerance, meaning that the person needs more screen time, more notifications, and more engagement to achieve the same level of satisfaction. Over time, this rewiring becomes more ingrained, making it even harder to break free from the cycle. For adolescents, whose brains are still in development, this rewiring can have profound consequences, leading to impulsivity, emotional instability, and an inability to regulate their behavior in a healthy way. These changes can persist into adulthood, creating a generation that is increasingly prone to addiction and mental health issues. In conclusion, the addiction to smartphones is not something we can ignore any longer. It's time for all of us, parents, educators, mental health professionals, and society as a whole, to recognize the scale of this issue and take steps to address it. We need to acknowledge the problem, change our behaviors, and advocate for healthier relationships with technology. The solution doesn't lie in demonizing smartphones or banning them altogether, but in creating a healthier balance and promoting digital literacy. We must learn to set boundaries, take breaks, and find ways to reconnect with the world around us. Only by doing this can we hope to reverse the damage that's been done and ensure that future generations are not doomed to live in a world where addiction to technology is the norm.